Hello, I'm Morina Peterson, a project manager at HDR focusing on healthcare architecture. And I am honored to be interviewing you, Katherine, for the AIA NOVA Black History Month Spotlight. Can you tell us just a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I'm Katherine Williams. I'm a licensed architect in Virginia. And I currently, my 9 to 5 is doing construction management for university here in the area. And then I do a lot of other stuff outside of that, which we'll talk about.
Doing a lot of stuff outside of your 9 to 5 is an understatement. But I want to congratulate you for being part of the team that won the 2022 AIA Whitney Young Award for the Writing the Vortex continuing efforts. I've been able to participate in several of those, and each one of them has been fabulous. So your career is very diverse, and to make sure that nobody misses anything, we are going to have a post of your bio so that they can learn a lot about you, so we can really focus on hearing about your experience with the AIA and NOMA and some of those differences. AIA and NOMA, which stands for the National Organization of Minority Architects, which includes being the NOMA Magazine editor, as well as the chair of the AIA Housing Knowledge Community. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you got involved in each organization?
Sure. So NOMA, I would say I wasn't really active in NOMA until I lived in California. Before that time, I was in Virginia in the Richmond area, and there were less than 5 Black architects, I think, when I was there. So that was in the early 2000s when I graduated from school. And there just wasn't an active NOMA chapter there or group, I guess. AIA was really big. So I was actually on the AIA local chapter board when I was there. And let me start with that then, I guess. So the AIA chapter, I got started there because when I graduated, I was trying to figure out how to get a job. And I'd been in school in Howard and DC, and then moved back to the Richmond area and reached out to the AIA because that was the organization I knew as far as like professional organization, and figured, you know, if someone's going to know where jobs are, that's a good place to start. So they actually connected me with a local architect there. And then he connected me with a former classmate of his who was starting a firm, or sorry, not starting a firm, but growing his firm from a single person to a staffed office. So I connected to AIA through that. And then when I started asking them about the exams, because I knew I wanted to pursue licensure, they basically were like, well, we used to have someone who organized exam prep classes. Would you like to do that? And so in doing that, I got recruited to be on the board, the local chapter board there of AIA, and kind of went from there. And the NOMA, I got started really on the chapter level when I was in California, because there was a really active chapter there with a lot of things going on. And I got started on the magazine because when I was really early out of school, I wrote an article for a book that was published by the Boston Society of Architects at the AIA chapter up there. And because of that, that article, I got asked to be on a panel, which was sort of like, as a young architect, was a really great opportunity to sort of have the chance to speak in front of others about my experience, particularly being a Black woman in architecture and not seeing a lot of people who looked like me in the profession. And that sort of opportunity helped me really to sort of see how me writing about my experience was not only helpful for me, but helpful to sort of share this unique perspective that I had. And so I started writing, and then I started pursuing other opportunities to do that, and got involved with the AIA National Associates Committee, editing their newsletter, and then got the opportunity to do the NOMA Magazine. So kind of like all like intertwined, interconnected, but, you know, sort of doing one thing and somebody seeing that and then asking like, oh, are you interested in this? And kind of growing from there.
And so you're active in both organizations at the same time. Do you find that you get different benefits from each?
Yes, I will say that AIA, because it's so large, it has, they have a full staff here in DC at the headquarters. There's just a lot of things that they're involved in. And the housing group I started being involved in because when I was in California, I was working for nonprofit housing development organizations, and that was really my focus was housing and community development, especially in communities that had been underserved, communities that had sort of had a lot of redevelopment in the 70s in San Francisco, and a lot of just like impacts from redevelopment, and that we're now sort of experiencing, or I guess then in the sort of late, I guess, 2000s, experiencing sort of the impacts of gentrification in San Francisco. So being on the housing knowledge community was sort of supplemental to what I was doing in my day-to-day work, because it really gave me exposure to what other people around the country were doing, and to share my experience, and then to bring ideas back from other people. So, the fact that the AIA has all of these smaller sort of subgroups, I think is really beneficial for young architects starting out. I think it's really good because it gives you a way to plug in if there's something that you're really interested in, whether it's schools or housing or urban development. You can sort of plug into a group of people that is also really focused on that and really interested in that, or just learn more if it's something that you're interested in. Whereas NOMA is a smaller group, but I think very much more so a tighter knit, I think, as far as how the chapters and everything are. And I think there's benefits in both, but it's definitely like the NOMA, being a person of color and like being in rooms where I'm particularly the only one, like having the NOMA experience, being able to have that place where that's not the first thing that people notice when you walk in the room, right? They're more concerned about like, what are your ideas, and what do you bring to the room, and how can we share what you're doing, versus like, oh, you don't look like anyone else here, which was definitely an experience I got when I was young, and tried to get over that, but it can be intimidating, as a young architect walking into a room like that.
And I know you leverage your networks. Do you find it easier or easier to leverage one network or another in terms of AIA and NOMA, or is it more about the people?
What do you mean more about the people? Like as far as who's involved?
Like one-on-one basis, just they just happen to belong to a particular organization, but it's more about the personal connections you made over the years.
Yeah, I think for me, it's probably more about the personal connections. And like, because each of them does different things, right? Because the AIA has, they have the big, huge national conference, and they have grassroots, and they have all these other like leadership things. There's a lot to plug into there. And then NOMA, I feel like there's all these people who are doing great work around the country, and the chapters are always like really active. And because students are a part of NOMA, there's this great spectrum of ages and experiences. So like you can go to a NOMA conference and talk to students about, their project that they submitted for the NOMA competition, as well as like sit down and have coffee with someone who's a senior architect and, talk to them as well. So yeah.
Okay. So there's been a lot of efforts for the NOMA and AIA to work together. How do you feel that's going from your perspective, and how do you think it can be perhaps leveraged to better serve Black architects and students?
Oh, that's a hard question because I just think it is a hard question because I have feet in both, I guess. So I know like there's an MOU and everything like that. And I think because so much
is the memo of understanding.
Yeah. So there's an MOU between the two organizations as far as like how they share resources, knowledge, or whatever between the two. I think for me, the AIA, because it's sort of seen as like the standard, and people outside of the profession That's one of the things that they look for when they look for architect, right? They're like, oh, are you AIA?
Mhm.
Because in their mind, like that means that you're a real architect. So there's a little bit of I don't know, cachet, I guess, that comes with that, or just acceptance. So, and because AIA is, I don't know, 80,000 or something big, it's just a lot more resources there, right? So I think on as far as the Black architects, I think pushing some of the diversity stuff that they have been pushing is important as far as the metrics. I think that's really important. That was one of the things that when I was working towards getting my license, that I really started looking at was, how many people are getting licensed and how many of those people are Black, right? And what's our percentage?
Mhm.
Is it going up? Is it going down? Like what's affecting us? So I think having the resources that AIA has to be able to push firms in the direction so that Black architects are getting the opportunity, whether it's jobs, whether it's getting access to help getting licensed, I think is important. And then also on the other side, I think as far as making sure that people who want to start firms, right? Because I think that's the thing too. I think which is something that I have sort of been thinking about lately, is because a lot of people uh, are working in larger firms, larger corporate firms, and I get a lot of calls actually, or emails for people to refer architects, and it's really hard because there aren't enough um, small firms, small Black firms to refer people to. And the ones that I do have, I always like joke with them, like, when are you going to beef up your staff so I can send you more work? Because there are people who are out there who are making concerted efforts to hire Black architects, or to hire other architects of color, versus just going to the same architect who's always been hired. So
That's a good answer.
I mean, that's roundabout, but I think it's really hard to say, like, what should one organization be doing for another organization. I think some of the things that they have done, like the AIA supported NOMA with their staff, as far as, like, I think there was a grant so that NOMA could have capacity for an executive director for a few years, which is something that's really helpful, right? Because like running an all volunteer nonprofit that's 2,000 people or something is really hard for a group of people who are already like working high pressure 9-to-5 jobs, to then ask them to serve on a board, and to run chapters, and then to run national organization is really hard. So being able to have that executive director position, and now to have it be a full-time position, I think is really helpful. And hopefully it helps the organization grow, but also, not just grow like people and money, but grow as far as like things that we are able to do.
No, I agree with you on that. It's a hard question to ask, and I think it also evolves over time. So one of the things you mentioned was you've mentioned several times is getting licensed, encouraging other people to get licensed, which is one of the things that you've definitely done through your website and through writing the Vortex, and issuing the Desiree Cooper Scholarship. Can you talk a little bit about that and the Black Women in Architecture Brunch?
Sure. So the Black Women Architecture Brunch started in 2015 and really sort of came out of a conversation that I had with a young Black woman in DC who had posted an article on the Equity by Design website. And I realized that I didn't know her. Not that I know everyone, but because like in DC, like we run in the same circles, like usually even if you don't know someone, you might have heard the name, and I didn't know this person. So we went out and had lunch and we were talking. And one of the things that she talked about was the desire to have her own firm. And so I started asking her about people who I knew who were either firm leadership or firm owners in the area, and she didn't know them. And so I was like, you need to like have my whole network available to you. And so it's like, I need to figure out a way to get us in the room together, right? Because I feel very passionate about the fact that we should be working together, right? I shouldn't always feel like every job site I show up to, I'm the only Black woman there. So whether it's working together, firm to firm, whether it's partnering, whether it's like I'm on the construction side, so being able to hire, colleagues who are on the architecture side, I think is very important. So that event started and in 2015, and we had like 40 people crammed into a conference room in a firm who, basically let us use their space. And afterwards, people were like, when are you going to do this again? And I was like, okay. So yeah, here we are now 7 years later and still doing it. And the last 2 years, we've done it virtually because of COVID, which has been an opportunity, right? Because we did it in DC, and then other women from around the country were like, well, we want that here. And I was like, I'm here in DC, and I didn't see the vision of trying to like import myself around these countries. So I try to like help other people do it in their locations. And us having it virtual these last 2 years has actually helped us open it up to other places. And sort of like our group here has been able to support other women to have events in their location. And then when we started, probably like the third year or so, I was able to raise money from the event because we had people who wanted to sponsor. And so when I talked to a group of friends about, hey, I have this idea, one of the things that was difficult for me when I was trying to get my license was that I didn't always work in a traditional firm that was paying for my exams. So a lot of times it was coming out of my pocket. And so I know that that's a barrier for people. So we decided to start the scholarship fund in memory of one of our colleagues who died tragically here in DC. So in honor of her and as a way to help Black women, and now we sort of expanded it to help other people of color as well, sort of have a way to help pay for their exams, support them. So that's not a barrier for people when they're doing it.
Yeah, because it's been expanding over the years, and we will have a link so that people can donate to the scholarship fund, because it started out as one scholarship, and now I think you're giving multiple scholarships a year. So yeah, congratulations on. Just thank you for all that you continue to do. I'm definitely a beneficiary of many of your efforts, and I continue to look forward to the fabulous work that you do. And thanks for taking time.
I mean, it's a team effort, I will say. I lead a lot of things, and I'm trying to maybe transition some leadership, but it's definitely like I recruit my friends and call them up and say, hey, come help me do this thing. So that, we can get it done and the work is shared amongst many. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you. It's been wonderful talking to you today, and I'll see you soon. I'll see you at the next Black Women in Architecture Brunch.
All right. Thank you.